This content is brought to you by Uphold, which makes crypto investing easy. I've been a user of Uphold since 2017. They're one of my go-to exchanges. You can buy, sell, and trade cryptocurrencies on Uphold. You can also trade precious metals and equities. They have 10 plus million users, 250 plus cryptocurrencies, and they're available in 150 countries. As with all exchanges, you can buy and sell on them, but I highly recommend you custody your own crypto, not your keys, not your coins. If you'd like to learn more about Uphold, please visit the link in the description. Welcome back to the Thinking Crypto podcast, your home for cryptocurrency news and interviews. With me today is James Diorio and Jake Ryan. Both of these gentlemen are part of the Tradecraft capital firm, and they are also both the authors of the book Crypto Decrypted. Gentlemen, it's great to have you both on.
Thank you for having us.
So I would love to start with your backgrounds and then segue into how Tradecraft Capital came about. James, maybe you can kick us off. Tell us about your professional background, please.
Sure. So I'm an engineer by trade. I've got a degree in computer science, College of Engineering, and was a developer for a few years, but then really moved into becoming an operator, entrepreneur, business builder, built 5 businesses, bought 2, sold 2, and that's kind of been my background. It's interesting. Jake told me about Bitcoin in 2016, and I looked at it. It was $674 a coin. I didn't understand it, and I said, "This is nuts. You're nuts. Good luck with your crazy crypto thing." True story. I had an exit in 2017, and I said, "Okay, maybe I'm nuts. Maybe I didn't give this a fair shake." So I traveled the world. I went to conferences in Dubai and Toronto and Europe and all over the US and digested everything I could, and I became convinced in what was going on here. I also became convinced it was very hard to understand what was going on here, and that if it took me a year, that many people probably weren't getting it. So, long story short, Jake and I re-engaged. I became an earlier investor, and then helped him shape the thesis for his first book, which is Crypto Asset Investing in the Age of Autonomy. And then we were off to the races at Tradecraft Capital, which is a digital asset manager.
That's exciting. And it sounds like you guys are fairly early to the market. Jake, what's your background, and what was your first encounter with Bitcoin, and what was your aha moment?
Yeah. So, I was out, I got a degree in computer science from the University of Texas. And I was out in LA. We were hanging out in 2012 or something. And I was watching The Good Wife. That was the very first exposure I got to the idea or concept of Bitcoin. I was watching The Good Wife in 2012, it was a TV show. And then I was tracking it for a little while, and I was living in LA. Jim and I were living in LA, and we wanted to really just think about what's going on in the world. How are we going to capture value? What's going on? And so we came together. And Jim will tell you more.
And
please.
Yeah, tell us about Tradecraft Capital. What's your assets under management? What do you guys invest in? Tell us a bit about what's going on there.
So Tradecraft Capital is a digital asset manager. We focus primarily on blockchain technologies. And what's unique about how we work, so Jake founded Tradecraft, and what's unique about how we work is we really focus on blockchain, but how it relates to the other noble technologies today, AI, robotics, and IoT, and what we call the age of autonomy. And that was the focus of Jake's first book, was the age of autonomy. The age of autonomy is really unique, and Jake brought the thought leadership to this. Blockchain is a breakthrough, and that's great. But we really look at it how it's relevant because it relates to the other 4 noble technologies, AI, robotics, and IoT today. And that's really exciting. What most people look at is just blockchain for blockchain's sake. And the work is based on 100 years of economic theory, which says that all long wave cycles are based on revolutionary technologies. So you saw this with oil, steel, electricity, the internet. You saw it with all of these things. And blockchain is at the tip of the spear of the next cycle. We say we're out of the information age, and now we're in the age of autonomy. And what's fascinating is where AI, robotics, and IoT can give you a self-driving car. When you add blockchain, when you have the ability to do capital transactions on a peer-to-peer level, right, without human intervention, you can move to a self-driving business. And this is where we think it's going. And this was unpacked in Jake's first book, as we mentioned, which is now part of Pepperdine's MBA program. It's a U.S. News & World Report named it Top 7 Books on Crypto and DeFi. And it really unpacks this. And so many people look at crypto as just money or an investment opportunity. And we really want people to be aware that blockchain is a technology that's going to touch every single area of our lives, period, end of story. And that's really what led us to the second book, which is Crypto Decrypted, where we move on from this age of autonomy concept and we actually look at why is this valuable? Why is it valuable to every single man, woman, and child on the planet? And why is it going to touch everyone's lives? So that's a really big driver for the second book. But to sum that up, the thesis is valuable because it allows us to cut through all the noise, and much of the blockchain space is just noise right now. So it really allows you to get down to the gold that's going to persist over time, over the next 40 to 70 years. We're really less concerned with what happens over the next 3 weeks and more over the next coming decades.
Yeah, and let me summarize. I just want to get the basic thesis out there first, which is IoT and robotics are generating massive amounts of data, and AI is interpreting that data into knowledge. And then blockchain and crypto are able to take that knowledge and generate economic activity without human intervention. And so it's really about a technological revolution. It's about a cluster of innovations coming together, IoT, robotics, and blockchain coming together with AI. And it's really, there's an entire technological revolution going forward. And that's the message that we want to get out.
It's interesting you mentioned that because just recently I was hearing some folks share the thought that crypto blockchain helps to bring validity and verification to an AI-driven world when content and different things can be generated with AI. We just see music being replicated with artists' voices, artwork, you name it, right? There's photos of Trump with cops and doing things, and it looks real. So it seems like the blockchain and different crypto blockchains and so forth are bringing the verification level to a world that's going to be kind of wild when you think about it with AI and different technologies.
Yeah, and it's going to be critical. When you look at what's happening, ChatGPT showed up, scared the bejesus out of everyone like it happened overnight. It's been in the works the AI development's been in the work forever. Now, what's going on though is AI turns data into knowledge, and that's doubling at a rate of every 12 hours. Data is doubling according to IBM. There's no way a human can process all that data. And if an AI is processing that data, that's great. How do we turn that into business? So that's how we got here.
So is this second book kind of a part 2 to the first book, or is it a little bit different?
Well, I think it's more accessible. I mean, the first book was really the foundation layer, right? We wanted to explain what was happening with money and what was happening with technology and long wave economic cycles. The second book is really about why. I think a lot of books out there are focused on the what or the how of Bitcoin or blockchain. And we really wanted to focus on the why. And so in Crypto Decrypted, we really look at the Byzantine generals problem, and we look at Why is that important to the average person?
Hmm.
You know, solving a top 10 computer science problem. Why is that important to everyone? And that's really at the core of what we're talking about.
And most people don't talk about that. Again, everyone's, the analogy is if you turn on any financial news station, you'll see Bitcoin mentioned 37 times a minute, and everyone gets all freaked out and FOMO and FUD and all this stuff. But no one's talking about this. And the Byzantine generals problem is amazing because in layman's terms, it allows peers to interact without a central command, without a central authority, which is how we operate in the physical world. In the physical world, I can hand you a $20 bill. I had it. It was mine. I handed it to you. It was yours. I didn't have to ask the bank, a company, anybody. And all of a sudden, we can do that. In the digital world, that wasn't possible, but now that is possible, and that changes everything. Having provable ownership of a digital good, whether it's money or something else, being able to transfer that digital good without having to get anyone else to bless that transaction, or say a yay or nay on that, is amazing. So that's why Dubai's sinking billions of dollars into the metaverse right now, and Japan is hot on their heels. Because we're going to see these digital worlds start to replicate what we can do physically. And that's staggering. And we could spend the rest of the day talking about use cases, but there's a high level. We think people need to understand that why, because it's just missed and it's going to change the digital age.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is a lot of noise about the price and investing. You can make money, but I don't think a lot of people understand the utility and the real world application, how it's going to change their lives. And eventually they'll be using different Web3 products, NFTs, and different blockchains in different ways and not even know it. It'll be powering their airline tickets and their movie tickets or whatever it may be, concert tickets, and they won't even know it's running behind the scenes.
I think, it's really important to see that, we want to be able to have peer-to-peer transactions, and we want to be able to not have a trusted third party. If you can go on a website and have your own, locker or your own mailbox, and you're able to take your own information, right? Your own data. You're not logging into their website, right? You're coming with your own locker, with your own digital assets, with your own money or your own, whatever you have. And you're logging onto a website, and then you're able to share, you're able to control, what's in that locker. It's like a PO box, blockchain allows us to be able to have a public address. Everybody knows where my mailbox is, right? And then I have a key. I can open my own mailbox, right? If I can have that on top of a browser and have my own little locker there, my own little digital locker, then I can go allow people, access. They know where I am. They can send me information. I can pull things out of my own digital locker, for Web3. And that really allows us to own, control, and bring back more sovereignty over our own data instead of, where Web2, we're logging into a bunch of, different sites and so that's really the transformation here is, I think, bringing back where perspective scope is and where data will actually reside.
Now, folks can pre-order the book now. When is the release?
May 23rd.
May 23rd.
So we're coming up on it very shortly here.
Awesome. So I'll put links in the description for everyone to go check that out. Very exciting to see that. So let's talk about the crypto market at large. Obviously, you have this book, helping to educate the masses about the utility and all the great benefits of crypto and blockchain. You guys have your fund. But in the United States, we're facing some headwinds here. You have the regulators are confused. Some are doing enforcement actions. Everybody's waiting on Congress to act. And then, you mentioned earlier, James, that Dubai and other countries and jurisdictions are moving ahead. They're giving the green light. What's your take on this whole situation? When do you think we might get clear balance regulations?
Well, so there's a couple things I would say there. I would lead into this by saying one of the things that we talk about in the book, and I'll tie this in, is we want to debunk the myths that are out there. So we talk about the myths of crypto and crime. No, it's a terrible thing to use for crime. It's very easy to track. You can find where everything is happening. It's just a myth. The other big myth is that regulation is going to kill crypto. It's going to kill blockchain. Now, back to your immediate question, we have a situation in the US here where we've got regulation by enforcement right now. All the kids were let out. They did what they did, and they didn't follow some basic guidelines. So, Big Brother's now stepping in. I'm not a fan of regulation by enforcement, but we certainly need something to make some guardrail, so that the institutional money can feel safe to come in, so that we've got some fundamental foundation. What's missed by people is while Celsius imploded, right, that was an issue with a business run by a human being who made some bad choices and puffed up their balance sheet, right? Meanwhile, all the DeFi contracts work just fine. We're just not used to trusting software. Now, the problem that we have with that in the US is if we don't get our act together quick, as you mentioned, it's being adopted throughout the world. Dubai, Japan, even Hong Kong, right? Which means that they're getting a green light by China, right? And we're not even talking about Europe, which is ahead of us with their MiCA bill. So we need to get our act together. I think the risk is not that regulation is going to kill crypto. I think the risk is that if we don't get proper regulation here in the US, we're just no longer going to be a player in this, because this is a worldwide phenomenon.
My concern is just that. I think it was Pantera Capital that came out with something like, in the 90s, during the age of information, 47 of the top 50 businesses were in the US during that, cycle. During that long wave cycle, we extracted, we had 47 of the top 50 businesses were in the US. In this next cycle, in the crypto age, we looked at it, and I think they said something like 3 of 50 companies are in the US.
Something like that. It was tragic.
It's because, everybody else is moving forward with it. And the concern is that we are trading our economy for our money. And that's the concern.
Yeah, it's challenging for entrepreneurs and innovators who just want to, be able to build and get their businesses going and not have to worry about, okay, who's the SEC going after next? Who's going to show up at their door next? It's, and I hope, with the recent hearings with the SEC Chair Gary Gensler and members of the House Financial Services Committee, that it was maybe a wake-up call for other members of Congress as well, because showing the incompetence and not being able to even answer simple questions, and hopefully we get some bills going. I saw Chairman Patrick McHenry is looking to build on the Lummis-Gillibrand bill. So maybe there's some silver lining here, but it's pretty rough.
Yeah, I hope you're right, and I think there's a couple of things that need to happen. Is we need to obviously get more knowledgeable representatives. So there's education there. So, if you're in a government body, you'd like a copy of the book, let us know. We'll make sure you get one. But to that end, it's in addition to getting regulatory clarity, we need to actually stop infighting. We've got the CFTC and the SEC are fighting over who's in control. So both, we can't have regulatory actions on any side or regulatory clarity if there's not clarity at the top of how this stuff is supposed to fit in. And the problem is sometimes it is a security, sometimes it's a commodity, sometimes it's both, sometimes it's neither. And we have a new thing, and it's hard to deal with new things. I think, if we look at the MiCA bill out of Europe, they did an amazing job with this, because it was basically stablecoin focused. And they said, hey, if you're going to do business in the EU, you've got to use a euro-backed stablecoin. And they're protecting their currency in doing that, right? So they allow a super minority of transactions to happen in dollar-denominated stablecoins. those are the kinds of things that done now are going to make a difference come 2024 and 2025 when those go into effect, and they're paving the way. What are we doing that? We're still fighting over who controls what. It's just the wrong question, right? The genie's left the bottle. The technology's not going back. We need to embrace it. And I hope we do, because our country's been founded on that. But boy, it's time.
I think it's more important to really also consider most of us are thinking and relating to crypto or digital assets like they're financial capital. And while that's true, it's really that they're production capital. What we focus in the book on is that crypto blockchain technology is really about production capital. It's just like factories in the industrial age, right? Factories were production capital, or intellectual property rights in the information age. That was production capital. Crypto assets and digital assets really are more production capital, right? They're going to allow us to produce things in the economy, produce income, produce things. And so the fundamental problem right now is that most people are relating to crypto assets as a financial capital, when in reality, they're production capital. And that's what you'll find out in the book.
Despite all these challenges that we have, Bitcoin's 4-year cycles continue to play out. And we have the halving coming up next year. And while we're facing regulatory headwinds, there's also macro headwinds with the Fed, inflation. And today the Fed came out, they said they're going to continue to raise rates. What do you guys think about the upcoming cycle, and that is the halving next year? Do you see another Bitcoin all-time high, same cycle repeating as it has the past 3 times?
I think so. Listen, the Fed, unfortunately, is really painted in a corner. They are wanting you to focus on interest rates. And while that's interesting, that's probably not they have 2 mechanisms with how they operate, right? They can raise or lower interest rates, but what people don't focus on is they can also, through the FOMC, their open market committee, they are out there in the markets. They can expand or shrink their balance sheet. And so I believe that the Fed is really going to have to expand its balance sheet going forward. They've done it 4 times in the past, where some big crisis has happened, and the Fed comes in and expands its balance sheet. And I believe that probably in the next 12 months or so, they're probably going to reverse from QT to QE and go back to expanding the balance sheet. And that's really the thing that I would be focused on, is a little bit less about interest rates and a little bit more about the Fed's balance sheet. And are they doing QT or QE?
And generally, when we see QE, asset prices rise. So Bitcoin, stocks, and so forth. James, what do you think, after the halving, same thing, 2025, new all-time high?
Yeah, I think so. I think that we've got, what's interesting now is you've got this cycle that's been proven out over time. We're entering the 3rd cycle here, right? So after the gutting of 2022, we would expect 23, 24, 25 to be really great years, setting the table in 23 and then the halving in 24 and on through 2025. I can't underscore enough what Jake's saying, that this corresponds with what's happening in the macro cycle as well. So those 2 things coming together are really interesting. And there's one other factor that hasn't been taken into consideration yet in any of this, which is adoption. While all this has been going on, right, and stepping out of Bitcoin for a second, looking at everything, or the general blockchain space, Starbucks, Lowe's, FedEx, big businesses are adopting. The big banks are stepping in. So all of this in the 4-year cycle, yes, I think we'll hit all-time highs. And this is before we even get big adoption in place, all right? So you've got this kind of perfect storm, a perfect positive storm of 3 things, with the cycle reinforced by these other 2 elements. And yeah, I think it's off to the races. I think you just have to be patient though, because nothing ever goes up in a straight line. So you've got to really keep your eye on the overall macro or the overall, global 3-4 year picture.
So what's on your roadmap for Tradecraft Capital? Given all these things that we've discussed, are you investing in coins specifically or in infrastructure companies? What's your plan moving forward for 2023?
So Tradecraft, we are led by an investment thesis, which is laid out in the book, and then we have investment themes. We have 4 investment themes, and that really drives our investment plan. One theme is sound money, and that's important with Bitcoin. The second is autonomous protocols and platforms. There are many layer 1 or coins out there that are platforms that allow smart contracts and allow for a lot of utility. And so we focus on what we think are the big platforms and protocols that are going to allow for autonomous operation. So we focus on that. We also focus on DeFi, decentralized finance. And so what we think are the primitives and the two-sided marketplaces that will exist in the future that everybody needs. And so we have an expression in the market, in buying those assets. And then the 4th theme is really about the metaverse, right? Metaverse is going to be a multi-trillion-dollar add multi-trillions of dollars to the economy in the coming years and in a decade. And so how people produce money, produce income, it's really going to come from the metaverse. It's going to come from gaming and from digital worlds and virtual and AR and VR. And so the metaverse, the digital worlds that we create and living and operating in those digital worlds. And so we're investing in the metaverse, and we have several expressions, of that as well.
Now, there's a lot of skeptics of the metaverse out there. I'm of course bullish on it. I believe certainly we're very early and the infrastructure is being built, but eventually, after multiple iterations, it's going to get to a place where a lot of people are going to be interested in it. You mentioned people being more immersed in it, earning a living through the metaverse. But we see like Zuckerberg, and he's kind of the poster boy right now of, okay, the metaverse has failed or it's not going anywhere, right? And these were common themes in the early days of the internet and early technologies. And of course, he's taking a loss as Facebook has been trying to figure it out. When do you think, and this is a hard question, might be the time, or what do you think the timeline might be where it hits a tipping point and people are like, oh, okay, this is not Zuckerberg's metaverse. This is legit, and I can go earn from it. Is it 5 years from now?
I have a lot to say on this one. Jake, please.
I was a computer science major in, 1996 or so. And I can remember working at an internet service provider. People would get dial-up modems, and I can remember thinking about, we were talking about PCS, or personal communication systems. We didn't have iPhones yet, right? This is 1996, but we could envision a future where people could stream movies on a phone. And I can just remember by day, I'd be working at this internet service provider, and people would call up and say, I just bought the internet and I need some help, like we fumbled through that technology at that time. By day, I was helping as an internet service provider, but at night I was a computer scientist finishing my degree, and we could see this world where mobile phones, or PCS systems is what we were calling them at the time, would allow us to stream and run our world. And so that took about 10 years. 1996 to when the iPhone came out was about 10 years. And so I would say we are in year 3 or 4 or 5 of that 10-year trend, right? We're fumbling around with the technology, and it's going to take some time before we get our iPhone of the metaverse. Might be a few years out. Let's say 5.
Yeah, and I would say, look, Zuck hasn't done us any favors with what people think of when they think of the metaverse, right? But let's remember that Facebook came after MySpace. Okay, so the first big metaverse out there maybe is not the one that's going to win, and I don't think we know quite what it looks like yet. I think Facebook or Meta looks at it like the next great social network, right? I think it's bigger than that. And, we mentioned earlier, I'm fascinated by, again, like Dubai and Japan sinking all this money in because they believe, look, instead of doing this Zoom, if we could be around a table and have it feel like we were really right next to each other and transacting with the same type of experience, that people would value that experience. It's going to be important for commerce. So it's not just gaming and it's not just playtime. It's a chance for us to find a way to interact in a way that's much more, strange enough to say, comfortable for human beings, right? And I think we're way farther along. My mind kind of got blown in 2020 when I put on an Oculus, and all of a sudden I'm having a conversation, right, with my godson over in Colorado, and it was like we were right there. It wasn't exactly the same, but it was very, very similar. Let me rephrase that. It had these similarities where I felt like we could be there with each other, and we're having this interaction. It was blocky, it was chunky, it was early, but it was way more advanced than I thought it was going to be. So I think that just like ChatGPT showed up, there's going to be a point at which all of a sudden, Metaverse has shown up, and it's going to be a generation where people are interacting, and it's going to surprise them. I can back your 5 years, Jake. I think that's real.
Yeah, we'll have to have you guys back on. And we'll come back to these conversations. Remember what we said 5 years ago.
I love it. Absolutely.
Gentlemen, great chatting with you both. Excited for the book. Folks, if you want to check it out, links will be in the description. And we'd love to have you back on to learn more about what your plans are with Tradecraft Capital and so forth. But thank you for joining me.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.